Okay, very good. I'll call roll. Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Here.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Here. Ricardo Sanchez.
Oh, you're here. Okay, good, Ricardo. Okay, Shirley Kim.
Here.
Hey, Gray, I
Thank
don't look
you.
like Ricardo at all, you know.
Yeah, I know, but you could have changed. I can't see you. I'm on a telephone here. Of course, you're not on video anyway. Okay, let's go to Jig Patel. Are you back?
I'm back. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Jason Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. I'm here. Okay, we're all back. We left off with Maria's report on enforcement and compounding, so let's return. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
left off on agenda item I as shown on the screen. Discussion and consideration of proposal to develop an alternative enforcement model. Members, as you may remember, the committee has been evaluating this issue for quite some time. I will not review all the prior history on the subject, but provide a few key items. In July 2020, the committee was provided a presentation on the administrative case process. As was shared during that presentation, the administrative case process has two fundamental guiding principles: due process of the respondent and public protection. As part of the presentation, members were reminded that the state has the duty and the responsibility to assure a licensee is competent and trustworthy. During the committee's discussion at its January 2021 meeting, members directed staff to develop recommendations to achieve the policy goal to reduce case resolution times and reduce associated costs that would not require statutory changes. I would like to call your attention to the meeting materials that describe a pre-accusation conference that is used by the Board of Accountancy and a model used by the Department of Managed Healthcare. You go to the next slide. Thank you. As a committee, we considered the pre-pleading conference and several policy questions related to the proposed solutions, which are detailed in the meeting materials and displayed in the slide. To note, actually here, I mentioned earlier that we looked at two processes. The pre-accusation conference used by the Board of Accountancy is what we continued our discussion on. The model that's used by the Department of Managed Healthcare Services did not meet the criteria of not requiring statutory changes. So that's why we're going on to talk about the pre-pleading conference. So we looked at these policy questions to the proposed solution, and all that information is detailed in the meeting materials. They're here on the slide to help us with the discussion so you could see what we talked about. Members noted that the pre-pleading conference appeared to be a good solution and noted support of the concept. As a committee, we discussed that such a conference may be appropriate, may not be, I have to make sure I emphasize that, may not be appropriate for all cases and should be limited to certain types of cases. The committee noted that the model did provide an appropriate balance of consumer protection and due process. Members also determined that use of such a process could reduce case resolution times, and the process could result in cost savings for the board and for licensees. Mr. Soni, who presented earlier in the agenda at our committee meeting, spoke up and advised members that the AG's office considers pre-pleading conference of great value because it provides an opportunity for the licensee to provide additional information. He noted that if an agreement is reached with all parties, it can end the settlement after the accusation is, it can front end the settlement, so making it earlier after the accusation is filed. Mr. Soni noted that, again, not all cases may be appropriate for this process. Our committee concluded that pursuing the implementation of a pre-pleading conference is appropriate and requested the staff to work with the AG's office to further develop the pre-pleading conference process, as well as to develop a flow chart that would incorporate this process. Members, as I open this up for discussion, the committee would appreciate your feedback about such an approach, and if you agree with the committee's direction. First of all, committee members, did you have any additional comments?
Maria, this is Debbie. The only additional comment I have, and you really probably already covered it in your summary there, was that I got this, and I'm not trying to put words in the other committee members' mouths, but it just seemed like this pre-conference really clicked for everybody at the committee meeting, and it seemed like it checked all the boxes, or at least most of them, that we've been hearing in the past months, maybe even years, about trying to address this situation. So I don't know if it was staff or if it was our board president, who happens to be an accountant, or whose idea this was, but I think that this was a good alternative to look at.
Well, of course, it was all my idea.
And the record will show
I do
that.
agree with you that it really does seem to check the boxes, and I think it would be very valuable. So, and Maria, you have done a great job in explaining it.
Thank you. I think that what's to note here is that this will come back to us and our committee and to the full board for further discussion. So we're not looking at approval at this point. What we're looking at is, do you agree with the committee's direction that we put the materials together to explain how a pre-pleading conference could work for us, and include some sort of visual diagram, which is the flow chart, that would help explain it to us so that we could discuss it further. Any other member comment?
I just like to say that it really sounds good to me as far as case resolutions. So I just really like where you're going with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text box and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to say on behalf of CPHA, I appreciate the chair's willingness to work on this issue. As you know, we've been at this issue for a while. I'm very curious and excited to see this proposal being debated back on the Enforcement and Compounding Committee. At that time, we'll have further comments, but I just want to, again, express my appreciation for continuing this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Our next comment comes from Joe Grisella. Joe, your line is open. You will also have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say this is a very good program. I'd like to thank Greg for bringing the accountant's concept in here. This is a concept that is used at all boards, at the medical board, and I really appreciate the work that was done there. And also, I want to thank Greg for all his work over the last 10 years. We may not be seeing him at many meetings, so anyways, you did a great job. This could be your finest moment. Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Seeing no more requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Please do. Thank you. So members, as a reminder, we will work on the details of a pre-pleading conference at the next enforcement meeting. More to come. Next agenda item is J, review and discussion of enforcement statistics. Attachment 6 includes the enforcement statistics for the first 9 months of this fiscal year. Members, do you have any comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
Okay, seeing none, I think we can close it.
Will do.
Our next committee meeting is scheduled for July 15th. And Mr. President, that concludes my report from the Enforcement and Compounding Committee.
Thank you, Maria. Excellent report. Now we move on to Legislation and Regulation Committee update. And being that I'm the chairman of the committee, I'll be giving the report. So I will begin. First item is discussion and consideration of Assembly Bill number 5. Members, the first item for the committee's consideration was the impact on the provisions of Assembly Bill 5 from several years ago. As you may recall, Assembly Bill 5 effectively codified the Dynamex Decisions ABC test used to determine an individual's employment status while providing for clarifications and carve-outs for certain professions. Specifically, the carve-outs related to physicians and surgeons, dentists, podiatrists, psychologists, and veterinarians. And they were allowed to continue operating under the previous framework for independent contractors. However, pharmacists were not included in the carve-out. As part of its response to the Sunset Committee's background question, the board noted it was aware that some pharmacists act as consultants for skilled nursing facilities and hospitals, and such individuals may be negatively impacted by the exclusion of pharmacists from the new law. As indicated in the meeting materials, a request was received to place this issue on the agenda to allow for discussion of the issue. The meeting materials include the correspondence received. During our meeting yesterday, it was very apparent that this issue is quite complex with a variety of opinions. There was a significant amount of public comment on the issue, with some urging the board to take no action, while others spoke in support of the need to change or clarify existing law. A common theme during the discussion is that currently the law does not provide for a distinction between practice settings, such as a pharmacist working in a retail pharmacy versus a pharmacist serving as a consultant in a long-term facility, exempt hospital, or other environment, where a pharmacist is providing direct patient care activities or provide a solution for, or it did not provide a solution for the negative consequences to patient care because of the change in the law. As a committee, we are not offering a recommendation. Members did contemplate if this is an issue the board should be handling, or perhaps is more appropriate for stakeholders to work together to develop a legislative proposal that balances the various concerns. Before I open up to all members, I want to ask my committee members if there's anything they would like to add. Committee members, is there anything you would like to add? Okay, hearing none, I will
I think you did a good job explaining it.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Excuse me, Greg. I just wanted
Sure.
to say that I just really appreciate you being very thorough in explaining what happened. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, now, I will now open the discussion for public. So, moderator, please open the lines.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Not seeing any requests. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Okay. We will continue on. There was no action. Next is discussion and consideration of pending legislation impacting the practice of pharmacy, the board's jurisdiction, or board operations, sorry for the slip. Included in the meeting materials are several measures for our consideration. Assembly Bill 2. This measure was recently passed out of Policy Committee and was referred to Assembly Appropriations. As indicated in the meeting materials, the measure would require agencies to review their regulations, identify any regulations that are duplicative, overlapping, inconsistent, or out of date, then revise those identified regulations and report to the legislature and governor. The committee noted the concerns raised by staff and the significant fiscal impact to the board. Members also noted that legislation is not necessary for the board to review its regulations. The committee also considered public comment that suggested the board should establish an oppose unless amended position and provide for an extended date for compliance. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an opposed position for the reasons cited in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. With the committee's recommendation serving as a motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And not seeing any responses,
yes,
so I will close it.
Let's close it up. Okay, members, with a motion on the floor, having received public comments, I'll now take a roll call vote. So I will begin with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Shirley Kim.
Yes.
Thank you. Jason Weiss.
Abstain, Greg.
Okay. Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo, are you still with us?
Say he may be a few minutes late.
Well, he was here for the roll call. I'm just wondering if he stepped away. Anyway, I'll just put him down as not voted for the moment. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes.
That was a yes for me, Ricardo.
Okay, thank you. And as said before, the motion does pass. Okay, next is Assembly Bill 29. This would require that the notice of a meeting of a state board must include all writings or materials provided to the state body by its staff and make it also available to the public. The measure would also require the board, upon written request, to make copies of such materials available to the public the same day that they are disseminated to a board member or 72 hours before the meeting, whichever is earlier. During our meeting yesterday, members noted agreement with the staff recommendation and several technical challenges with the measure. The measure is currently on the Assembly Appropriation Suspense file. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an oppose unless amended position for the reasons cited in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, with the committee's recommendation serving as a motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on this legislative item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And seeing none, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Okay, with a motion on the floor and having received no public comments, I will now take a roll call vote. I will begin with Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo? Okay. Was that a yes? Okay, Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho? Sung?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Shirley Kim?
Yes. And Greg, I'll be stepping away momentarily.
That was a yes?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jason Weiss?
Abstain, and I will be abstaining all the way through all of these legislative items.
Okay, I understand. Jason Wong? Albert Wong. I'm slipping
Yes.
my tongue today a lot, I think. Thank
I
you.
think it works for me.
Okay. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, I vote yes.
Greg,
Motion passes.
Greg, this is Ricardo. I was voting yes too.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Okay, the motion passed. Next is Assembly Bill number 69. It would require a state of emergency to terminate 60 days after the governor's proclamation of the state of emergency unless the legislature extends it by a concurrent resolution. And it also prohibits a concurrent resolution from extending a state of emergency by more than 60 days. Committee members agreed with the concerns raised in the meeting materials. The committee also, given the legislative deadlines, felt that it was possible the measure may not move forward. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an oppose unless amended position for the reasons cited in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any questions or comments?
Greg, this is Debbie. I'm just trying to figure out what are they trying to solve for? Because I mean, it seems like as we note, and the reason we're opposing with this past pandemic, this would have been crippling for us if this was in play. I mean, do we have any backstory on why Assemblymember Kiley is opposing this? Are we missing something?
I don't have a background story. Ann, do you have one?
I think it's a philosophy, Debbie. I have not spoken with the author's office, but I think it's a philosophy, not necessarily, something I believe.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by members? Okay, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the text box and submit that to all panelists. Our first request comes from Paige Talley. Paige, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I won't take that long. I just looked on the tracking program that CCAP uses, and this bill is still in its policy committee. So unless it's heard today, and it doesn't say it's going to be, it won't. It will either be a 2-year bill or dead. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it'll be an issue.
Yeah, I don't either. Thank you. Okay.
Seeing no more comments, I'll close the panel.
Thank you. Okay. With the committee's recommendation serving as a motion, again, let's have our vote. So I will start with Cheryl Butler.
Yes. Yes, I support.
Thank you. Shirley Kim? Shirley, have you dropped off?
Step out. She says she goes step out.
Yeah, she said she might, so I guess she did. Okay. And Jason Weiss is abstaining. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Next is AB 107, which would expand the requirement to issue temporary licenses to practice a profession or vocation to include licenses issued by any board with the Department of Consumer Affairs, except as provided. It would require a board to issue a temporary license within 30 days of receiving the required documentation if the results of a criminal background check do not show grounds for denial, to an applicant married to or in a domestic partnership or other legal union with an active duty member of the armed forces who is stationed in California. Temporary licenses would expire 12 months after issuance, upon issuance of a standard license, or upon issuance of an expedited license, whichever occurs first. As indicated in the meeting materials, the board considered a similar measure last year and established an opposed unless amended position. The measure recently passed out of policy committee and was referred to Assembly Appropriations. Consistent with the board's position from last year, the committee is recommending the board to establish an opposed unless amended position for the reasons cited in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, with the committee's recommendation serving as the motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Seeing none, I will close the panel.
Yeah, let's close it up. Thank you. Okay, let's vote. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Shirley Kim. Oh, she's gone. Okay. All right. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. And Jason is an abstain. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay. The next bill is Assembly Bill 225, which would require the board to issue temporary licenses to honorably discharged veterans. Under the provisions, such temporary licenses would expire 18 months after issuance and would expand eligibility for a temporary license to an applicant that meets specified criteria and who supplies evidence satisfactory to the board that the applicant is a veteran of the armed forces as specified. The committee noted agreement with the board's need to retain its ability to assess for minimum competency prior to issuing a temporary license. Public comment included a suggestion that the bill should be amended to also include active members of the military, since active members who are pharmacists tend to moonlight at pharmacies when they're in port to earn some extra money. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an opposed unless amended position for the reasons cited in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Seeing none, I will close the panel.
Okay, thank you. And with the committee's recommendation as the motion, we will now vote. Albert Wong, what is your vote? Was that a yes? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. So it passes, and we move on. Next is Assembly Bill 527. This measure would include board-sponsored language related to the descheduling of some non-narcotic combination products to align with federal law. As this measure contains board-sponsored provisions, the company recommends to formally support AB 527. Also, a quick update. This measure has passed through the Assembly and is now in the Senate. The committee received public comment in support of the measure as well. Our recommendation to the board is to establish a support position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. With the committee's recommendation serving as the motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
Okay, hearing
Seeing
none,
none,
I guess we can close it.
I will close it.
Thank you. Okay, it's time to do the vote. So I will begin with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Albert, unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes, and the motion passes. Assembly Bill 646 is next. This would require the board to update or remove information about the revoked license resulting from a criminal conviction should the board receive an expungement order related to the conviction as specified. Staff notes that this measure appears to build upon the policy goals of AB 2138, statutes of 2018, which restricted a licensing board from denying an application based on some criminal convictions and required licensing boards to amend substantial relationship criteria, regulations, and regulations defining rehabilitative efforts. According to the author, this bill is intended to reduce employment barriers for people with previous criminal records who have been rehabilitated and whose conviction has been dismissed or expunged through the judicial process. The committee is not offering a recommendation on this measure. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, moderator, let's open up for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text box and submit that to all panelists.
Okay,
We have a request.
None.
We do have one request.
Oh, we do have one. Go ahead.
Stephen Gray. Steve, your line's open. 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. After the meeting, when this bill was discussed by the committee, I received an inquiry that caused me to also pass this on to the board for consideration. I realize the committee is not making a recommendation and the board is not probably going to take any position, but the concern was that the ambiguity with which the bill may be handling convictions outside of California or under federal law. And as you all know that pharmacists are particularly susceptible to enforcement actions by federal law, and as well as in other states. And so, but California would have really no control over the expungement process in other states under federal law. So I just wanted to pass on that concern in case this comes up again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Seeing no additional requests, I'll close the panel.
Thank you. And since there is no action requested by the committee, unless a board member would like to make a motion, we'll move on. Would anybody like to make a motion? Okay, not hearing anybody, we'll move on. Next is Assembly Bill 657. As included in the meeting materials, this measure no longer applies to the board, so the committee didn't consider the measure, and I guess we'll just move on from there. Next is Assembly Bill 671. This would require the Department of Health Care Services to provide a disease management or similar payment to a pharmacy for specified costs and activities that are associated with dispensing specialty drugs in an amount necessary to ensure beneficiary access as determined based on results of a DHCS contracted survey as specified. During the meeting, we received several comments from stakeholders recommending that the board support the measure. Comments were made that without compensation for the additional cost of providing these specialty drugs, pharmacies could not afford to provide them and therefore would not provide access to patients that are in need of them. Our recommendation to the board is to establish a support position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, let's open for public comment. Moderator?
Sorry, my buttons were not clicking. This is the moderator.
No, that's okay.
We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text box and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I just want to let the board know that, as mentioned during the Ledge committee yesterday, this is a CPHA-sponsored measure. We appreciate the committee's recommendation for support and ask the board for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
And our next comment comes from Lindsay Gollahorn. Lindsay, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is Lindsay Gollahorn with the California Retailers Association and National Association of Chain Drugstores, and we just want to register our support for this bill. We think it will increase access to critical medications for patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Seeing no additional requests, I will close the panel.
Okay, great. So we will now vote on the motion, which is to support the bill. I'll start with Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. That was 2 votes. Okay. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. The motion passes. Okay, the next one is Assembly Bill 864. This measure would state it is the intent of the legislature to enact legislation to transfer the cures system to the Department of Public Health. I believe it's currently under Justice. As this is a 2-year bill, the committee recommends to continue to monitor the legislation, but not take a position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And not seeing any requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Since we didn't take a position, we'll move on. Assembly Bill 1064. This would authorize a pharmacist to independently initiate and administer any vaccine approved or authorized by the United States Food and Drug Administration for persons 3 years of age and older. During the meeting, members received public comment in support of the legislation. The committee's recommendation to the board is to establish a support position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Not hearing any, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Again, this is another CPHA-sponsored measure. We thank the committee for their support recommendation and ask the full board for support. Thanks.
Thank you, Danny.
And our next comment comes from Lindsay Gollahorn. Lindsay,
Okay.
Your line is also open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi again, this is Lindsay Gollahorn with CRA and NACDS, and again, just registering our strong support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And Stephen Gray. Steve, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I would like to express appreciation to CPHA for sponsoring this bill and the support from CRA and NACDS, and also on behalf of CSHP. I want to comment, in case you haven't been watching it, and I know most of you have, but there is actually a crisis now caused by the COVID pandemic. And that is that the regular vaccines for children on up are way behind their normal rates. And several experts have commented, we are in the position now of lacking herd immunity for such things as a measles pandemic or other serious public health processes. We have proved in pharmacy, which now over 40,000 pharmacies across the United States are vaccinating for the COVID vaccine. That type of access and ability should be made permanent all over the country. And hopefully we can lead the way or help lead the way here in California by enacting this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Seeing no additional requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, it's time to vote on the board's, on the committee's support position motion. And let's go with, start with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. And Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, and the motion passes. Okay, next is Assembly Bill 1236. This bill would require the board to request at the time of electronic application for a license and license renewal, or at least biennially, specified demographic information from its licensees, and if designated by the board, its registrants, and to post the information on the internet websites that they each maintain. The bill specifies that licensees and registrants are not required to provide the requested information. This information provided to the board would then be reported to the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. During our meeting yesterday, we acknowledged the concerns raised by staff that board would be required to serve as a collection and repository agency for another state agency, as well as the cost impacts, including both staff resources and IT systems. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an oppose unless amended position for the reasons stated in the meeting materials. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, with the committee's recommendation serving as the motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type I would like to make a comment and submit that to all panelists. Seeing no requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, it's now time to vote on the motion from the committee, which is to oppose unless amended. I'll start with Albert Wong. Albert, are you
Yes.
muted? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Jake Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. And the motion passes. Next is Assembly Bill 1328. This bill would expand authority for pharmacists to perform CLIA waive tests either approved or authorized by the FDA upon patient request or hospital authorization, provided that there's a valid valid and respective CLIA certificate of waiver and laboratory license, with some exceptions. Exceptions would include CLIA waive tests that are used for surgery, diagnosis or treatment of heart failure, female fertility, or ovulation prediction. The measure would require a pharmacist to notify the patient's primary care provider or other appropriate physician and surgeon, yes, of any abnormal test results. In the event the patient refuses consent or does not have a primary care provider, the pharmacist shall provide the patient a list of physicians, clinics, or other healthcare service providers to contact for ongoing patient care. Further, it would amend pharmacy law to declare that pharmacy practice is a patient and public health-oriented health service that is continually evolving to include more sophisticated and comprehensive patient care and public health activities. As a committee, we discussed this measure and noted the upcoming recommendation by the licensing committee. Committee comments included general support of the measure, assuming pharmacists have sufficient resources. Members also received public comment in support of the measure, including that the measure will broaden access to care. As a committee, we did not take action to allow for a broader understanding of the board's position following discussion and consideration under the related item in the licensing committee chair report. Members, do you have any questions or comments?
Greg, this
Okay,
is Maria.
given that.
Hello?
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sorry. I just wanted to continue on with your last comment there, that there is discussion going on in licensing committee.
Yes.
And then this is also
There was.
similar to Bill SB 409.
Mhm.
And there's an opportunity to
merge
discuss
them.
the two together. So just wanted
Right.
that for the record.
Yes, thank you, Maria.
Greg,
Okay.
I'm wondering, is it appropriate for us to, since this was discussed in licensing and we were supportive, I think it would be considered both this one and the other one, that we should have a position of support.
Yeah, I was going to ask if anybody would like to make a motion because of that.
Yeah, can I make a motion
Yes.
that the board takes a position of support?
I'll
Yes.
second that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, so let's go ahead with public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text box and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Lindsay Golohorn. Lindsay, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, this is Lindsay Golohorn with CRA and NACDS, and we just, again, want to register our support for this bill. Thank CSHP for their efforts. We support the board's efforts as well. So however we can get to getting permanent authority for pharmacists to perform all CLIA waive tests is something that we support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next comment comes from Lorianne DeMartini. Lorianne, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. This is, as noted, a CSHP-sponsored bill, and our entire intent behind this bill is to allow pharmacists to fully engage in providing public health services. Something that we saw as an outcome during the pandemic is that they were unable to do the work and the care for their communities that they're trained to do. We welcome the opportunity to work with the Board of Pharmacy in reconciling the two bills that are currently going their different ways through the houses, and we would welcome a support on this bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne.
And our next comment comes from Paige Talley. Paige, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Paige Talley with the California Council for the Advancement of Pharmacy. A couple of comments. One is I want to thank Ms. Veal for making the motion to support, and whoever it was that seconded that motion, I want to thank too. And I urge the board to support this bill. It really does do so much for pharmacists and their patients. So thank you, and I look forward to a support position. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Paige.
Seeing no further requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, with a support motion from the committee, we will now vote on it. And I will begin with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, and the motion passes. Okay, next we will go on to AB 1430. This measure would require a pharmacist who dispenses a Schedule II drug to do so in a lockable vial and require the pharmacist to provide a copy of an opioid fact sheet for patients published by the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and include the appropriate passcode in any patient notes maintained in the pharmacy system. Under the provisions, exceptions are provided and include dispensing that occurs in a hospital or the patient or patient's agent requests that the medication not be dispensed in a lockable vial. The Act would also establish a funding mechanism for pharmacies to seek reimbursement for the cost of the lockable vials from the manufacturer of a controlled substance. The board would be charged with assessing a civil penalty in the event a manufacturer is delinquent and reimbursing the pharmacy. As a committee, we discussed many of the challenges with this measure, including patient safety concerns and the impact to board staff resources. The committee also questioned if such legislation is necessary, given current provisions of the law related to displaying these products, and noted that Schedule II drugs include more than opioids, questioning the requirement to provide the fact sheet in all instances. Members also noted that the provisions of the measure should be voluntary. The committee also received public comment in opposition to the measure, noting workflow challenges, reimbursement challenges, and patient safety concerns. Our recommendation to the board is to establish an opposed position for the reasons stated. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and then submit that to all panelists. We have a comment request from Lindsay Golohorn. Lindsay, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, Lindsay Golohorn again with CRA and NACDS, and I'll just briefly reiterate the concerns that I relayed yesterday in the Legislation and Regulation Committee. As President Lippy noted, we have some significant concerns with patient safety. We think this bill will put patients at risk who have difficulty opening the lockable vials or who forget their passcodes. We also have liability concerns. The bill protects prescribers from liability if a patient can't access their medication, but not pharmacists. It does put a significant financial burden on pharmacies who will have to front load the cost for the vials and implement entirely new accounts receivable processes to seek reimbursement from manufacturers. And lastly, it is unnecessary. There was a bill passed by the legislature in 2018 that requires pharmacies to display lockable storage products for controlled substances that have to be prominently displayed for customers who wish to use them. So again, we appreciate the discussion yesterday, and we do agree with the Legislation and Regulation Committee's recommendation to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment comes from Stephen Gray. Steve, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I agree with the speaker who just spoke, Lindsay's comments completely. I mentioned yesterday that this bill would additionally put children at risk. And let me explain that. There is a law that requires a child safety cap on prescriptions unless requested by the prescriber or the patient otherwise. Studies have shown that that law puts children at risk, especially grandchildren, because grandparents have trouble getting the caps off and they leave the caps off, and that it puts the children at risk whenever they visit the grandparents' home. And there have been several tragedies reported to that effect. This bill also, I got a call from one of my pharmacy attorney colleagues, has been tried many times in many states, a very similar bill, and to our knowledge has never been passed. There was also a comment that that caller made to me that this bill may be an attempt that if the law requires it, the producer of these caps can avoid products liability themselves because the law tends to protect from the manufacturers from products liability general rules than if it is required by law to actually use the product. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Our next comment comes from Paige Talley. Paige, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Paige Talley with CCAP. Lindsay said everything that I would have and wanted to say. So I just ask for your support in opposing this bill. It really is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
And our last comment at this time is from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line's open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Just wanted to add CPHA's voice to also oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
And seeing no additional requests, I'll close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, the committee's motion is to oppose the bill, so we will vote on it. I'll start with Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo, are you unmuted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Ho?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes, and the motion passes. Okay, next is AB 1533, which would extend the operations of the pharmacy board until January 1, 2026, and make several other changes, including increasing the allowable maximum fine limit for pharmacies operating under common ownership, as detailed in the meeting materials. The measure passed out of the Assembly Business and Professions Committee earlier this week. During the meeting, members received public comments in support of the measure, with some comments noting support for the extension of the board, but concern about the fine provisions. Our recommendation to the board is to establish a support position. Members, do you have any questions or comments?
Greg, this is Maria.
Yes.
I wanted to respond to a letter that was in our package that was, since this is a board-sponsored bill, that was sent to Assembly Member Evan Lowe from the California Veterinary Medical Association. Just for our information and for the record, I think there's quite a few misstatements in the letter that wanted to clarify. First of all, I was surprised by the Veterinary Medical Association's request to deal with the collaborative practice agreement wording that's in this bill. One of the things that we noticed, or I noticed, was that there is a lack of understanding by the Veterinary Medical Association on how collaborative practice agreements work. Because even human physicians and veterinarians would need to agree to the practice to provide medication consultation and treatments. It's something that it's a collaborative, underlining the word collaborative. This is not something that's done without prior authorization. There's also specific protocols that are required to be understood by the prescriber. By even discussing the elimination of this practice from veterinarians, I don't think that they understand how it's currently being used in the veterinary practice. There are large veterinary teaching hospitals and even potentially large practice settings where veterinarians employ pharmacists to work with them hand in hand. Specifically, the reason I'm bringing this up more specifically is I know of a coworker of mine who works at a local large veterinary teaching hospital, and they provide these kinds of treatments to animal patients in collaboration with their veterinarians. And by removing such this kind of agreement would limit their treatment of veterinary patients, including complex things like total parenteral nutrition that are ordered by pharmacists in collaboration with veterinarians. So again, I guess I'm confused as to why the California Veterinary Medical Association doesn't understand how this practice works, and I think there's an opportunity for us to educate them.
I agree, and believe me, you're not the only one that's confused. Thank you very much. Okay,
hey,
are there?
Greg, I just had one question. And you kind of mentioned it, but there was some penalties for who established the dollar amounts? Because when I was flipping through it, it was pretty large.
Yeah, but it's an up to. It's a maximum limit. Currently, the maximum limit is $5,000, and it was decided by who? What's that?
Yeah, and it moved up to like 100,000, right?
Oh, this could go up to $1 million, depending. But it's very what do you call it, descriptive as to what has to happen. It basically has to be a recurring violation that recurred at least 4 times. And again, it's an up to. It's not something that's a given.
Yeah,
so,
I was just curious who came up with the dollar amounts, because those are pretty big. And then the other thing is, I guess obviously we want this to pass because it's our it's our thing, our bill. But it would come to, like, how that exactly works then would come to the Board of Pharmacy, and we would kind of put together the regulations around it, correct?
Yeah, and the Board of Pharmacy did not come up with the amount of the fine.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. let's open to public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Lindsay Golahorn. Lindsay, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi again, Lindsay Goldhorn with CRA and NACDS. First, in response to Board Member Veal's question, I believe the language came from the legislature. I think the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, just to answer that question. Specific to, of course, yeah. Specific to the language relating to the fines, as I mentioned yesterday, we, of course, support extending the sunset of the Board of Pharmacy, and I think we support some of the other provisions of the bill. But we are very concerned about this language. What it would do is it would establish fines against chain pharmacy companies ranging from $100,000 for a second violation. So if you just have 2 violations, even if they're in the same store, that's a minimum $100,000 fine, and then up to $1 million for a 4th violation. So going from $5,000 up to $100,000 to us seems excessive, and I think it would have a pretty devastating effect on chain pharmacies in California. We're not aware of any other states that hold private corporations not licensed by their boards responsible for actions of licensees. There are also other ambiguities in the language that need to be clarified, specifically the fine triggers and the thresholds. And I also want to point out that there are instances when violations occur at the store level that are against corporate policy. So even if a corporation has a policy against something, there might be a store that commits these violations, and even in those cases, the company would be liable under this bill. So we think AB 1533, at least this part of it, needs to include an appeals process for pharmacies so that we can prove violations occur contrary to corporate policy, and we think a lot of this language needs to be further fleshed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Our next comment comes from Paige Talley. Paige, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. Paige Talley with CCAP. I just want to mention that also in the letter from CVMA, they are seeking to have a compounder placed on the Board of Pharmacy, to have a position available, like you already have, I think, 4 or 5 categories of pharmacists.
That's not the bill we're discussing.
It's 1533.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm
looking.
Corrected.
I'm sorry, but it was what Maria brought up, but she brought up the 2nd section of that letter. And so I just want to say that I'm in support of what the CVMA is requesting, and think it would be important to have a compounding pharmacist on the Board of Pharmacy, a position for them on the Board of Pharmacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
And our next comment comes from Jazzy Graywall. Jazzy, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Jazzy Graywall with UFCW Western States Council. First, would like to thank the Board of Pharmacy staff and the board members for all their work on the Board of Pharmacy Sunset Review, considering the delay due to the pandemic of a year. We believe strongly that AB 1533 includes necessary provisions to improve the practice of pharmacy and delivery of care in California, and express our strong support for permitting higher fines for repeated and brazen violations of pharmacy law meant to prevent Californians from dying. These provisions only apply to pharmacy locations operating under common ownership, not a single independent pharmacy. And the bill proposed increasing accountability for second and subsequent violations within the same 12-month or 5-year period. All of the provisions, even for the second violation, for a penalty of up to $100,000, and then for 4 repeated violations within 5 years of up to $1 million. These are all ceilings, not floors, for the financial penalties that can be issued. I would also like to just point out that $5,000 is half the limit of small claims court, just for perspective at how low these pharmacy penalties are. This board had to work with 3 district attorneys to bring forward complaints related to pharmacy consultations that levied $600,000 penalties against some of the country's largest corporate pharmacies. And however, patient consultation issues still occur. So those penalties weren't even severe enough to address the behavior. And also in chain pharmacies, pharmacists are often told what to do due to corporate policies. So just wanted to make those points and really look forward to having these provisions move through the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Our next comment comes from Joe Grisella. Joe, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I also think we should have a compounder on the board. We've been asking this for a long time. I believe there's 2 open positions for pharmacists. As you know, compounding is probably the most complicated division of pharmacy, and we don't have someone with actual experience of filling 100 prescriptions from non-sterile to sterile products. And I think it'd be very beneficial to have a sharp compounding pharmacist on the board. It'd be way to your advantage. Please. And then I also, two of the board members, I think Debbie and Song, also wanted to have this discussion. Maybe we could bring this up at the next meeting to have a compounder on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You know, Greg, I think, like Joe just said, we have open positions. So I hope that Paige or Joe, you guys get the word out and have good compounders apply. If we don't come out and recruit, you kind of have to go apply. So, yeah, we agree with you, Joe and Paige.
Should it be helpful, there is provisions in the bill that is in print that would convert one of the positions to a compounding pharmacy specialized in human drug preparation. It's in the bill.
Hey, and one other thing, what's the definition of chain? Is it more than one?
Debbie, I would have to look. I think that for purposes of appointment to the board, I believe that it's 75 or more.
No, I was thinking around these fees where there's a chain, the fines to the chain pharmacies up to 100,000 up to $1 million and I've heard it called common ownership. So I'm just thinking, is that 2 or more, or is there a number? I tried to find the bill and read it, but I couldn't find it.
I don't believe that it is defined in the bill. I do think that they were referring to, but I'm not the author of the language, perhaps similar to what is in 4001 that defines it for purposes of that subdivision, but I can't say for certain because I'm not the author.
Okay. Anything else, Debbie?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments?
No, we will close the panel.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's time to vote. The committee's position was a support position, and that is the motion. So I will start with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. And Jig Patel. Jig?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Albert Wong.
Yes.
Albert? Okay, thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay, next is Senate Bill 306. As indicated in the meeting materials, SB 306 would allow pharmacists to dispense a drug prescribed pursuant to EPT provisions without an individual name if the prescription includes either the words expedited partner therapy or the acronym EPT. Further, the section provides that a pharmacist would not be liable in and not subject to a civil, criminal, or administrative action if the use of EPT was done in compliance with the law unless otherwise specified. Members discussed the concerns raised by staff and also received public comment to support the measure. Our recommendation to the board is to establish a supportive amended position to address the patient safety concerns, possible options for consultation, and liability concerns. Members, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Greg, because I wasn't at that meeting. I thought it said that not subject to civil, criminal, or administrative action if you use EPT. So, what are the concerns, the liability concerns? I don't have the staff information here.
Yeah, and I don't either. Anne, can you respond to that?
I believe it was a concern brought up by Board Member Butler, and I think that Council was going to just make sure that she felt that the liabilities protections there would cover what the concerns were.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member comments? Okay, let's open to public.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. CPHA has a support position on this bill. Just for purposes of quick background, under existing law, prescribers are allowed to prescribe EPT for the patients and their partners. However, pharmacists currently right now are not able to fill it for the partner due to requirements in prescriptions. This attempts to correct that issue. As I mentioned yesterday during the Reg Committee, there's a significant amount of concern, especially within the LGBTQ community, about STIs and STDs, that this would very much help. And so we would ask for your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
And seeing no further requests, I will close the panel.
Okay. As stated, the committee's position is support if amended. That is the motion. So I'll take a vote. Let's start with Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Bill passes. Okay. The next bill is Senate Bill 362. As indicated in the meeting materials, SB 362 would prohibit a community pharmacy from establishing a quota defined as a fixed number or formula related to the duties for which a pharmacist or pharmacy technician license is required to complete, or against which the community pharmacy or its agent measures or evaluates the pharmacist or pharmacy technician's performance of those duties in the community pharmacy. The measure includes significant penalties, some of which staff have identified as potentially problematic. I also want to ensure that members receive the 2 letters of support that were sent to us. As I read the letter from the author, amendments will be forthcoming to address the concerns identified by staff. Committee members received public comment both in support of and in opposition to the measure. As amendments are not yet in print that would address the concerns raised in the meeting materials, our recommendation to the board is to establish a support if amended position for the reasons stated in the meeting materials. Members, do you have questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. First up is Stephen Gray. Steve, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Yes, I have personal support but also concerns about this bill. And I think it's something that requires further discussions. I think that there are issues of that I think the bill is trying to get to in terms of staffing levels and so forth, but they're not only in community pharmacies. And I also know that there are issues of staffing in other professions. For an example, I'm quite aware of organizations that only give 10 minutes for a physician to see a patient according to their daily schedule. And so I think this is something that we're going to hear about, but I am really on the fence with support of this bill. I am eager to see the forthcoming amendments, as was just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Our next comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So this bill is a CPHA/UFCW joint sponsored measure. We are, as indicated in our letter, we are addressing those amendments along with the author that are of concern. I do want to note that those same concerns were mentioned during the legislative committees as well. So we are cognizant of that. We are working on it. And at this point, if the board members have any questions about that, I would be happy to answer. I don't want to speak for Jassy, but I imagine she would also answer questions.
Thank you, Danny.
Our next comment comes from Lindsay Golahorn. Lindsay, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As I mentioned yesterday in Legislation and Regulation Committee, CRA and NACDS are opposed to SB 362 as currently drafted. While the bill might be well-intentioned, it contains provisions that will jeopardize patient safety. The definition of quota in the bill is so broad that in addition to prohibiting quotas, it will also prevent pharmacies from using most types of performance metrics to evaluate a pharmacist's quality of work. All types of employers, including pharmacies, use metrics to evaluate employees and to reward them for exceptional work. And although there is language in SB 362 that attempts to allow some types of performance metrics, that exception is so narrow and the definition of quota is so broad that the bill would prohibit the use of patient care metrics imposed by the Board of Pharmacy as well. For example, in 2020, the Board of Pharmacy's duties to consult regulations were adopted, prohibiting wait times of more than 10 minutes for mail order prescription telephone consultations. The board's community pharmacy staffing regulations were also adopted, which require additional staff to be available to assist a pharmacist within 5 minutes at any time the pharmacy is open to the public. These requirements could be interpreted as performance quotas under SB 362, since pharmacies or other team members must be available within a certain period of time. We believe that pharmacies must have the ability to know and to track that patients are receiving their prescriptions in a timely manner and that patients are not experiencing long wait times. And we believe SB 362 is tying the hands of our members by forcing them to choose which law to break. We do want to note that we appreciate the proposed amendments by the authoring sponsors to remove the provisions of the bill that would result in license suspension and revocation, but because the definition of quota is so broad and there is that $1 million fine, which is so excessive, we have to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next comment comes from Paige Talley. Paige, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Paige Talley with CCAP. We, as I said yesterday in the LegReg meeting, CCAP does not have a position on this yet. We're waiting for the amendments that the staffer who is in control of this bill under Senator Newman said that as soon as the suspense file, if and when it's released from suspense, the amendments will be placed in it. And when I listened to the Business and Professions and Economic Development Committee, its policy committee, there was much concern expressed by all of the senators, nearly all of them. in that committee, and they said, we'll pass it out, but we're watching it and we want to make sure that you make the amendments that we're asking for. And one of them was that Senator Pan wanted to make sure that Senator Newman addressed exactly what he meant by community pharmacy. And we would like to know that as well. And for some of the reasons that Lindsay Goldhorn mentioned, we also have some concerns. So I would like it if you would wait until you see the amendments before you take a position on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
And our last comment at the moment comes from Jazzy Graywall. Jazzy, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jazzy Graywell with EFCW Western States Council. I just want to address some of the comments that have been raised by previous speakers and make some points of clarification. And also, I'm happy to make myself available for any questions that the board members may have. So in the bill, I just want to read what a quota is defined as in the bill. So a quota means includes a fixed number or formula related to any of the following: prescriptions filled, services rendered to patients, programs offered to patients, and revenue obtained. So this would not limit the ability of community pharmacies to be able to see how long it took a patient to wait in line, services rendered, how long it takes for a prescription to be refilled, but pharmacists cannot be told to do something in X amount of time. We do not believe that this is impeding on any of the former regulations or laws that have been passed, such as SB 1442, for an ancillary staff member to make themselves available to the pharmacist. That is not, we do not believe is in conflict with SB 362. Also, as it relates to the penalty provisions, as the senator's letter noted, we will be removing the pharmacy closure language. However, I do want to point out that the fines do not exceed $1 million, so they can be anywhere from $5,000 to $1 million. It gives the pharmacy board the flexibility to issue the type of fine that they would like, that they deem most appropriate, but it would not exceed $1 million. So up to that is the ceiling. And the one of the previous speakers mentioned the Senate Business and Professions Committee. There were some concerns raised in that committee that we are working with those committee members on. But there were also some positive comments made by committee members for why this bill is needed and why it's appropriate during this time to have this bill. There have been numerous articles about the stress that pharmacists are put under to meet quotas, to meet all the services that they have to provide, and then at the same time also work within a pandemic. And so our pharmacists are really overworked and overwhelmed and need to see some sort of relief and want to be able to use their clinical and professional judgment to determine their workload for the day. And that's what this bill will do, is will restore their professional judgment. Thank you, and I appreciate the time to make comments.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, are there any more?
No additional comments. I will close the panel.
Okay, let's close it up. Would members like to say anything before we vote on this one? Okay, not hearing anything. We will vote on the committee motion, which is to support if amended. And I will begin with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. And we'll go to Jig Patel.
No.
No, okay. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
No.
Okay. Sung Ho.
Yes.
Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion passes. Okay, I'm going to ask for a 10-minute break, and it's now 2:31. We'll return at 2:41. Moderator,
I am back.
you're back. Thank you. Do we need to do the recording again?
I actually left it running during the break.
Oh, cool. Okay, thanks. All right. In that case, we will take a roll call to see if everybody's back. Start with Albert Wong.
I'm here.
Thank you, Albert. Debbie Veal.
I'm here.
Thank you, Debbie. Jig Patel.
I'm here.
Thank you, Jig. And Ricardo Sanchez.
I'm here, Greg. I will be stepping away for about 20 minutes. Just want to give you a heads up.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Okay, Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you, Cheryl. And Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you, Maria. Sung Ho.
Here.
Thank you, Sung. I'm here. Okay, we're back.
Hi, Greg.
now we're
It's
up.
Jason. I'm still here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're not voting, but you're here. Glad that you're here. So we're back up to Senate Bill 409, which is a board-sponsored measure that would authorize pharmacies and pharmacists to provide CLIA-waived COVID-19 and influenza tests. The meeting materials note that the measure has enjoyed support. However, some comments indicate that the measure should be expanded, which is what 1328 will do, I assume. As it is board-sponsored, we do not need to establish a support position. Okay. We've talked about 1328 and 409. Yeah. Comments. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, once again, this kind of goes to the licensing committee recommendation that the board supported about, expanding this bill, I think specifically, to include the, CLIA waived testing. So I don't know how we handle it at this juncture.
Well, I think
this
what
is
we...
Ann. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ann. Go ahead.
So I think that the discussion here is probably just reporting out what was discussed yesterday, but the recognition even during the legislation committee was that the licensing was going to be discussing it. So the direction from the committee, the licensing committee, is what will be driving us working with the author's office to the extent they're agreeable to amend the provision.
Right. So therefore, we're not asking for a position on this today. Any other member comments? Okay, let's open to public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Lorianne DiMartini. Lorianne, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Lorianne DiMartini, representing CSHP. We're the sponsor for AB 1328. I want to thank the Board of Pharmacy for their inspirational leadership in expanding Senate Bill 409, or at least the consideration to expand to all CLIA waive tests, and I look forward to working with the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne.
And our next comment comes from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. As I mentioned, we had a previous supportive amendment on SB 409. With the inclusion of these amendments from the licensing committee, we are going to reevaluate our position, and we are hoping to reach a full support position.
Thank you, Danny.
And seeing no more comments, I will close the panel.
Thank you. And we will move on to Senate Bill 524. Senate Bill 524 would prohibit patient steering, which is also defined in the measure. Members noted general support for the measure, but deferred action pending the board's discussion on white bagging that occurred earlier under the Enforcement Committee report. The committee received public comment in support of the measure. Members, do you have any comments, or would somebody like to offer a motion?
I would like to make a motion to support.
I can
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Jig, for the motion, and we had a double support motion second there. So, who went first? I heard Ricardo.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any other board member comments or questions? Okay. Given that we have a motion, we will now open for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. We have a comment request from Danny Martinez. Danny, your line's open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is the last of our measures, sponsored measures on the board's list. This is our SB 524. We appreciate the motion to support and would like to request the rest of you to support as well.
Thank you, Danny.
And seeing no additional requests for comment, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay. Do any members have any other comments or questions before we vote? Not hearing any. I'll begin with Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. And Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo stepped away. Debbie
Oh,
Veal.
I'm here. I'm here,
back.
Greg.
Okay.
I'm voting
Okay.
yes. I haven't left yet, but I'm here.
Oh, okay. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Now we're up to Senate Bill 731. This is the last measure for our consideration today in the legislative portion of the report, which would expand the conditions for relief for arrest and convictions. I note some of the staff's concerns. As this issue is complex, I would again ask, as I did at the committee, Eileen Smiley to provide members with your assessment of the bill and its potential impacts to the board.
Certainly.
Eileen?
AB or Senate
SB 731.
Yeah, Senate Bill 731 builds on what AB 1076 Ting did in 2019, which restricted the criminal conviction information provided to boards in specific circumstances. Ting did it solely to misdemeanors and certain other crimes. What this new bill would do would extend this automatic relief and our ability to get information about any felony after January 1st, 1973, if their sentence was completed. There are different exemptions within this bill that would apply to, people applying to get applying to be a peace officer. And what the committee was concerned about and what I am concerned about is, given the fact that our licensees are both involved in preparing, dispensing, and having access to both dangerous drugs and controlled substances, that this is just excluding the board from being able to consider a wide swath of potential conduct, criminal conduct of serious offenses in making its licensing decisions. So what the slide does reflect what the committee resolved, and that is to establish a position of oppose unless the Board of Pharmacy is exempted from this provision.
Thank you, Eileen. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Smiley? Okay, as she already indicated what our committee position was, it is oppose unless amended, and the amendment that's being requested is to exempt the board from the legislation. Any member questions or comments before I open to public? Hearing none, let's open to public.
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. First comment comes from Stephen Gray. Steve, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I fully support the motion to have pharmacy exempted. It's just a different situation, and there's so much danger to the public, as we know, if this information isn't made available to the board before they give access to people that not only practice pharmacy, but that run warehouses, 3PLs, all of the people that and places that the board licenses. I do have a question for council, though, that I think that if not now, later, depending on how this bill goes, council needs to advise the board about the effect of this law in California on convictions in other states and under federal crimes. I do believe that, for an example, a conviction of a crime specified by the DEA does have the power to prohibit licensees from functioning in any environment where they have access to controlled substances. So I just think that needs to be explored a little bit so that when those situations come up, the board knows what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And seeing no additional requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Okay, it's time to vote on the committee's position, which is to oppose unless amended. So I will start with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay, as I mentioned, that was the last part of the legislative report. Now, I will go on to the regulations. Let's see. Okay, as we move to the regulations portion of the report, I note that the information provided is for information only. As the meeting materials show, the board has a number of regulations in various stages of promulgation. Unless members prefer otherwise, I will not review each regulation. Rather, I will just open up the regulations portion in its entirety to member comments. Members, do you have any comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll open up to the public to determine if they have any questions regarding any of the regulations that are in the materials.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on any of the regulation packages listed on the agenda, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists.
Okay, seeing or hearing none,
None.
I think we can close it.
I will close it.
Thank you. Next agenda item, number 13, is the Executive Officer's Report. So I'll now ask Ann Sodergren to provide her report. Ann, it's your floor.
Good afternoon, members. I know it's been a really long day, so I'm going to keep my comments very brief for you. A lot of detailed information in the Executive Officer's report for you. So we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. I've included in the attachment so that you can see some of the different types of education that we're doing, both using our Twitter and our website and subscriber alert system, which has really proven to be a very valuable communication tool as we have responded through the pandemic. We continue to maintain our homepage that has the consolidated resources for stakeholders on lots of different COVID-19 information, including as well the links as well as the method by which someone can request a site-specific waiver. We do continue to issue waivers, as you can see, and extend to the most recent ones deal with mass vaccination sites and the use of pharmacy technicians to align with other waivers that have been issued by the administration, as well as one specific to the authority for interdisciplinary or interprofessional supervision by interns. All of the waivers that are currently available are posted on the website, and then we do have the expired waivers on there as well for people for their reference. I guess, President Lippy, would you like me to open it up to questions or continue?
Sure. Please open up.
Members, did you have any questions?
Moderate.
I would just note there was a question earlier today regarding licensing and provisions for compounding pharmacies that perhaps, how we were handling that. That is included under the site-specific waivers. The board transitioned to a desk audit model during various phases of the pandemic and continues to use that for its non-resident locations. The desk audit model has been working well. President Lippy is reviewing all of those before a waiver is approved consistent with the delegated authority.
Thank you. Go ahead with your report, and then we'll open for public comment.
Okay, just a quick note that I have been appointed to serve on the NABP's Advisory Committee on Examinations. That will be a 3-year term that begins in June. And then we have also released our biennial report for the CPJE and NAPLEX passing scores. It's posted on our website, and we have also provided it to the deans of the various schools in California. And that's my report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ann. Let's open for public comment.
Greg, one more thing for board
Yes.
comment. This
Sure.
is Maria. I just wanted to congratulate Ann for her appointment on the NABP committee. I'm sure she'll represent California well.
Yes, I'm sure she will. Thank you, Maria. Okay, moderator, let's open for
Wait,
public comment.
I have a question real quick.
Okay.
So I'm just looking at, just because this came up earlier also, was the CPJE and the NAPLEX. And this says the board includes a pass rate information. The overall pass rate for CPJE is 50.8% and 88% for NAPLEX. And I believe there was a question during licensing if
there was.
Yeah. And I think it was more around looking at that discrepancy from the OPES audit point of view, but is there anything from your professional point of view, Ann, that we should be doing to look at that discrepancy?
I think we're continuing our partnership with OPES and evaluating. We know that our exam is psychometrically sound. That was their conclusion. But, as they, indicated both information for perhaps NABP as well as for us to evaluate, we will continue our partnership with OPES.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other member comments or questions? Okay, moderator, let's open for public comment on the report.
All right, this is the moderator. The Q&A panel is open. If you'd like to make a comment on the executive officer's report, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. And seeing none, I can close the panel.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, having completed all the closed session items yesterday, we can adjourn the meeting today. Thank you to everyone for your participation in the meeting, all members and all stakeholders, all of the public. Our next board meeting is May 27th, 2021. Everyone stay well, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you on May 27th, or at least hearing you.
I'd like to say something.
And everybody get vaccinated.
I have,
Yes,
and
sir.
I wanted to say that I will not be at that meeting. My birthday is May 24th. And
Happy
so
birthday.
I'll be the big 7-0, but I'm
Oh,
not,
wow.
I will not.
I would not have guessed that.
But I wanted to thank you, Greg, for and tell you how much I appreciate the way you have served as our president. I just commend you and just thank you for your service.
Thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate that. And happy birthday again.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Cheryl.
Everybody
birthday,
stay
Cheryl.
healthy, stay safe.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Vacations equal vacations.
Bye-bye. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.